Hello, this is Gradye Parsons, and this is our continuing series on the Book of Order. We're especially looking at the foundations of polity, which are all part of our new revamped form of government that was adopted in July of 2011. Today we're looking at section F10301, the middle section, which is a fairly long section, so I'm only going to read one line from this section. And that line reads, "To be members of the body of Christ is to be sent out to pursue the mission of God and to participate in God's new creation." Now, where we see the parallels in the book of Confessions is in Confession C67, and there's this great section in there that I think I do want to read all of that to you. "The church disperses to serve God wherever its members are, at work or play, in private or in life society. Their prayer and Bible study are part of the church's worship and theological reflection. Their witness is the church's evangelism. Their daily action in the world is the church's mission to the world." And here's the really great sentence. "The quality of their relation with other persons is the measure of the church's fidelity." I grew up in a small town, the same small town my father had grown up, and his father and his father and his father, on and on back. Most everybody there at one level kind of knew each other. They all had gone to a common school. They had intermarried relationships. There were cousins and people all about. I think almost every other teacher that I ever had dated either my father or one of his brothers. It was quite a small society. So I was taught pretty early that all relationships matter, because you didn't know who was related to who. And you also didn't know if you insulted Miss Smith, it may turn out that Miss Smith knew your mother, and it all come back to you. So that was always ingrained in me. But I think that phrase in the book of Confessions really underlines what is at the heart of that section in the foundations of polity is that how we relate to people in the world is a reflection of our congregations, of your congregation and of my congregation, of my faith walk and of your faith walk. And it doesn't say how we relate to certain people in the world. It doesn't say how do we relate to the people we like in the world. It just says the quality of those relations is a mark of the fidelity of the church. And those are two things you don't really usually put together, but if you think about it, they're exactly two things that should be put together. It's the quality of our relationship to the people we meet, the people we encounter, the people we see every day. Most of those people we don't relate to very deeply. We just had passing conversation, or maybe no conversation at all. I stop every morning at a local coffee shop, and pretty much the people that work there have got me trained, and I've got them trained. So basically, we transition money and coffee and never say a word. You know, it's all this kind of code language. But this particular piece of the book of Confessions really drives home the fact that how we relate to people in the world is a reflection of our church. So our haughtiness or meanness or just plain not paying attention is a reflection of the fact that our people think our church it may be haughty or mean and not pay attention or just not care about them. So the question I think you need to wrestle with in your church, and I need to wrestle with in my church and also in our lives, is what is the quality of our relationship with the people in the world that we meet? Are we open? Are we living our lives in such a way that when we meet them, at least the way we interact with them, there may be some glimmer they get of the God who loves them and who's given God's Son for their sacrifice for their life? Is that reflective in that relationship? Are we listening to what they have to share in the world? Do we care about their lives and their world? Do we show this great love and compassion we talk about in the Bible? Is there a redemptive aspect to our conversation? Is there a reconciling aspect to our conversation? All of those things are qualities we talk about inside the church, and we even talk about how important they are in the fellowship of the church. But this phrase really drives home the fact that also should mark the way we relate to everybody we meet, and it's a real mark of whether our church is doing what it's supposed to do or not. So here's the main question, what are the quality of the relationships you have outside your church? And what other quality relationships the people in your congregation have outside the church? And do they really reflect the fidelity to mission that is your church? And if they don't, why not? And if they're struggling, how can we work on that? And if we're unsure of ourselves, how can we work on that? So that's my challenge to you this week. Measure the quality of your relationships to the people around you, and think about how that reflects upon your congregation, the community where you live. Thanks, and we'll talk again.